Hello guys, welcome to the session. Today we'll be learning about Blender and how to get started with materials. So first of all, we'll talk about what are materials. So um, materials are basically the textures and stuff that you see in games. So everything like terrain, bricks, walls, etc. are made of materials. So here's some examples. So this is an asphalt floor texture here. This is a brick texture. This is a stone terrain texture, and this is a simple metal texture. So in this session we'll make a ton of materials, and we'll use those materials to make a backyard pool, as you can see here. So we'll make things like the concrete, the water, the cloth, the plants, etc. So first of all, we'll learn how to use the camera in Blender. So just give me a second. Alright, so first of all, we start with the camera because it's very important for rendering. So obviously if you're playing video game, everything happens through a camera. So if you open up a default scene in Blender, which if you want to start again, you could go with File, New, General. You get a cube, you get a light, and you get a camera. So I'll teach you how to use camera shortcuts in a second and what you can do with the camera. Alright, so now you should be able to see all the shortcuts that I'm clicking right over here. So first of all, you can switch to the camera view by pressing 0 on your numpad. So this right here is what the camera sees. So you can test this by going to render and render image. So render image takes whatever models is in the camera's view and it renders it. So so let's suppose you don't have numpad 0. Like if you have a laptop and you don't have a numpad, what you can do is you can go to edit, preferences, and input, and here you can enable emulate numpad. So your regular number keys will become numpad keys. Right, so coming back, this is the camera. You can if you want, you could grab the camera, click it, move it around, press numpad 0, and as you can see it moved here. Let me just change this to the right. Alright, so now you can also highlight the camera here, press G, and move it around like this. So let's just click here, click render, and render image. So now you can see it just renders this part of the cube. We can close that. So you can manually rotate and move the camera, but that's not a very reliable way to do it. So what you can do is, first of all, in your viewport here, just get a nice view, let's say over here, and then hit Control Alt Numpad 0. So that snaps the camera view to what was in your viewport. So now you can render it here. You could press F12, or you could just click here and render image, and it renders it here. So you see that there's shadows here. I'll explain that in a second. So again, let's switch to this view, Control Alt numpad 0, and then render image. So you can see it renders it over here. So after this, we'll be adjusting some camera properties over here, and after that I'll be showing you the render engines in Blender. So let's just Control Alt for now. Alright, so in our camera, if you select the camera object here, if you're in this view, you can click this frame, or you could go over here and click this camera. So if you go into the properties panel over here, you can see that the camera has this specific camera component, right? It's the object data properties, which is specific to camera. So let's Control Alt numpad 0 to this view. So you can adjust his focal length. So you can decrease it to make it really wide, or you can increase it to make it really focused. You can stick with the default, which is 50 mm, and there's perspective view and there's orthographic view. So in perspective view, the lines are skewed depending on the distance that you're viewing, which is realistic. Meanwhile, in orthographic, like you can see in the grid, all these squares are equal. So this is an equal area, this is an equal area, this face is an equal area, and so on. If you go to perspective, you can see that the squares over here are larger and the one over there are smaller. So if you want to make something realistic, you would use perspective, but there are situations where you might want orthographic. Like if you're let's say designing some graphics, you can also enter orthographic view over here in the viewport. So you press this and it becomes orthographic. You click it again, it becomes perspective again. You could also press this button to go to the camera instead of numpad 0, like especially useful if you don't have numpad. Alright, let's go Control Alt numpad 0 again. You can adjust the lens millimeters here. Instead you could, let's say, change the FOV. So this is what you would usually see in games as an option. So like it's the same as changing the focal length, but it's just a different way to view it. Let's just switch to 15 millimeters again. You can shift it on the X and Y. So like you see the camera object, its origin is here, but if you shift it like this, you can see that this square that we're viewing, I mean this rectangle, that changes. Let's make it 0 and 0, and I believe this is the viewing bounds. So I believe that after 100 meters maybe it stops rendering objects. You could test that right now. So let's see, grab yeah, so after 100 meters you can see that the cube completely just disappears. let's go back here. Alright, so what I did right now is, like, I zoomed out. So if you want to zoom out, what you do is you click the frame, you press G, and you hold your middle mouse button, and then you drag. So that helps you zoom in and zoom out. So again, G, hold the middle mouse button and drag, and then click. So there's also a depth of field option. So what this does is it focuses on a particular object if you want, and everything else becomes blurry. So let's duplicate a cube. Let's place them here. Shift D to duplicate, drag, Shift D, duplicate, and then let's go over here, maybe place this cube somewhere there. So here, go to camera, enable depth of field, and in focus on, you can either select a cube, an object here, or you can choose this eyedropper and select this cube. So, so I suppose if these cubes are far away, you might be able to see the effect. Let's try zooming out. Maybe I have to switch to render view. Okay, let's delete that for now and change the focus distance. We'll get back to this later after the render engines. Let's see, this is the sensor fit, viewport display, custom properties. We don't need to deal with that right now. So another thing you might want to do is you might want to change the aspect ratio here. So by default it's 16:9. So for that you go to this. It looks like a printer printing out an image. It's the output properties. So here you can set the resolution. So by default it's 1920 into 1080. If you want, you could flip this, make it 1080 into 1920. So it makes it vertical. So let's put this in here, and then let's try rendering it. So render image, as you can see, it renders it vertically. So we can set this back to its default, which is 1920 into 1080. So that's mainly it for the camera. After this, we'll move to basic materials. We're going to get started with that, and also render engines. So we'll get started with the principled BSDF, which is a shader. Which is a material that, well, it's a shader which has a lot of properties that are built in, which are easy to tweak. And we'll also explore the two render engines in Blender. Like one is Eevee and one is Cycles. So this cube here was rendered in Eevee and this was rendered in Cycles. So you can see that there's a difference in the output. So alright. So let's just delete these cubes here. X to delete, D to confirm, X and D. Okay, so let's just get a nice view. Click the cube, press period on the numpad to focus on it. Let's go with this view. Control Alt 0. So to create a material, you select your object, you go to the materials view, and usually there's material here by default, so we'll use it. So let's rename it, double click it, call it cube material. So first that's our basic shader. So you can change the color of the cube, let's say to red, but as you can see you don't see any changes yet. So for that we go to materials view. So this, we are currently in solid view mode. You can go to wireframe where you can see all the edges and vertices, and if you go to material view you can finally see your material. So you have base color, which is the base color of the material. You can make it green for now. We'll deal with the subsurface later. Let's see. Let's expand this a bit. Surface and isotropic. Okay, so this right here is the metallic property. So usually we'd keep it at either 0 or 1, and well, it makes the object look metallic. So, and then this is specular. So specular controls how much light is reflected off a material, but to see that you would need another material in the view. For that we could add another plane. Remember, Shift A, mesh, plane. Press G to move it, Z on the Z axis, press S to scale and make it big. Press G, S, G and Z to move. So now this is the roughness. So the roughness is basically how glossy something looks. So it controls the scattering of light. So the more glossier it is, the less rough a surface is. So if it's metallic and it's smooth, it's pretty much reflective completely. So it's basically a mirror. And you can see this reflection as a forest. I'll get to that in a second as well. So we can turn down the metallic and you can see it's like it's glossy like plastic. So we can go to the roughness, we can increase it, and now it doesn't scatter that much. So 0. Alright, let's make this one glossy as well. So what you do is you click the plane, you go to materials, you press new, and we can call this plane material. So for this one, let's make it slightly yellow. Okay, it's visible on the other side for some reason. I'm not sure why. increase the metallic. You can make it glossy as well. Yes. I'm trying rotating this 90 degrees on the x-axis, so R, X, 90 on the numpad. Okay, actually 180. R, X, 180. Okay. That's acting a little strange. We'll get to that. So, now, the lighting we have in the screen, the reflection here you can see is from what we call an HDRI. So, instead of having lighting information from like these lights, instead you have it from an image, right? So if you go to rendered view, you can see we actually have light information from light. So this is a light source. We can add another one. So go to light, point, and shift one over here. Increase its intensity. This one is 1000 watts, so make this one 1000 as well. Yeah, so that lights it up. So you can also add a sun, which is a directional light, and you can move its direction. So basically a sun is uniform lighting in all directions, so there's an infinite number of rays pointing towards like this. So that's in the rendered view, and let's go back to materials view. So here, if you want to view what's actually causing this, we can press this button, and is it scene world? No. Let's go to the shading view instead. So here you see this environment in the background. That's providing us with lighting information. So if you go over here now, you can click on this. That's the HDRI we're using. So this one is called forest. This one is a courtyard. So it takes lighting information from this. So like you can see there's a lot of light there. So this part is lit up. Just makes this a bit rough. Yeah. So it takes lighting information from this HDRI. So this is city HDRI, and if you want, you could also download your own HDRI. So let's do that right now. So go to your browser, go to Polyhaven, polyhaven.com, browse HDRIs, and let's search for a backyard. Okay, no result. Let's see, outdoor. Indoor. Let's go to urban. That's around. Let's just go to indoor, urban. Studio midday overcast. Okay, let's go for this one, Forgotten Miniland. So over here, you can download a 4K texture, which should take some time, but we could go for 2K or 1K, but those are in really great quality. So see, 4K is 90 MB and this is 2K. We can stick with the HDRIs we have in Blender for now, because this is gonna take a while. So just minimize that, and we'll be using Polyheaven later for some textures, so we can just keep it open. Alright, so coming back. So now I'm gonna talk about the rendering modes. So there's we switch to rendered view. So here everything is calculated in real time. So like when you hit render, this is what it's gonna show. So let's just select the camera, move it out a bit, or actually just the scene view, Control Alt Numpad 0. Not that much. So there's another shortcut you can use to make the camera fill your screen. So you press the home key if you have one, so that fills your view with the camera. Then you can hit render and render image. So as you can see, it renders what we get in the rendered view. So like if you switch to materials or solid, like let's try solid right now, like whatever it renders is what you get in the materials view. So rendered view again. So the render engine we're using right now is called Eevee. So it's a real-time rendering engine. So it's similar to what games use. So games render everything in real time, and it's less powerful, but it's much faster. And especially if you're using a CPU, Eevee is your best bet. So the other render engine is Cycles. So switch to that. So if you move around, you see that it's pretty slow and it's grainy, but if you just leave it be for a while, it just gets clearer. So let's take a shot here. Control Alt Numpad 0. Just take this, move it around a bit, zoom out a little bit, and let's try hitting render. So render image. So now it takes longer to render, but your final result is going to be cleaner. So basically what Cycles does is it does ray tracing. So it's not real-time ray tracing, like especially if you have a lower end card, but it slowly ray traces it and makes the light bounce, which usually makes it look much better than Eevee. So these are the samples that we're going through. So more samples means more reflections, a better accurate image, and this is the time that it takes. So it's gonna take a while. So what we can do is we can adjust some settings. So first of all, we can change the max number of cycles, max number of render samples. So it's 496, but we can go with 1024. And another thing is, by default it uses the CPU, but if you have a GPU, it's better to switch to GPU compute. and if you don't have a GPU, then it's kind of going to be hard to run cycles. It'll take longer, but you'll still be able to do it. So there's another setting that you might need to tweak. So edit preferences, and it should be somewhere here maybe. Yeah, so edit preferences, system, and here you can choose your render devices. So I think by default it's either none or CUDA, but optics is the better one. So in optics you can see whatever GPU you have. So this is my integrated graphics and this is my dedicated. So I've selected both, but I guess GPU compute will mainly use my GTX. So I think that's all the settings. So remember optics and your GPU if you have it. So now like my rendering has gotten much faster, so let's render it again. Remember, if it takes a lot of time, just reduce the number of samples in the render. Alright, so this is the viewport and this is the render samples. So this is the number of samples that are going to be rendered right over here. So like Cycles is trying to ray trace in real time here, but it takes time and it only does it till 1024. And in the render you could increase it, so you could make it less computationally expensive while you're viewing it, and you could make this like 4096 and you could leave it on there if you want a really nice render. So you could also turn on the denoiser here, so it just makes it render a bit better. Like it takes whatever noise there is and it denoises it. So you might want to view this while you're in the viewport. It's turned on by default in the render, so it might look a bit weird, but it's way less grainy and there's less noise. But I prefer to like keep it off in this view because I just like being able to see the grains render. Okay, so let's go back to the camera view and try rendering it again. So we'll just wait until this is complete. Right, so the render is complete. You can see that it looks a lot better than Eevee. So there's a way to compare it. So we have multiple slots for the renders. We rendered in slot 1. We could switch to slot 2. So go back to Blender and change this back to Eevee and hit render. So this is Cycles, this is Eevee. So you can see that Cycles has a lot it has better lighting, so like light gets reflected off of this plane as well and back into the space. If you look at Eevee, it's kind of just a more dull black. Which is not really realistic for shadows. So let's try something else here. So one thing you can do is you can make a texture emissive. So the emission is right over here. So basically you make it emit light. So when it's black it emits 0 light, but if you turn it up it starts becoming emissive. So you can, let's see, make it emit green. You can turn down the intensity a bit if you want to. So right now it just looks like a color change, but if you switch over from Eevee to Cycles, you can see that it probably starts emitting light, as you can see in the shadow over here. And we could go over here, increase the emission strength, and the emission becomes stronger. You could take off these lights to see it better. So now everything is just lit up by this particular cube. So let's switch back to Eevee. Okay, that's very dark. But let's add some spheres and make them metallic and almost completely reflective. So UV sphere. Just put one over here. Let's just add a light for now. Light, sun. Yeah. So let's right click and shade this smooth. Go to materials and call it sphere material. So let's make this a bit red and make it completely metallic and make it pretty smooth. So let's just make it smaller. Place one here, Shift D to duplicate, place one here as well. Okay, that is in the wrong direction. Okay, Shift Z to move it around on the plane, G and Z to move it a bit down, Shift D, Shift Z. So let's switch to Cycles. So as you can see, this emits light which is reflected off of these. You can see the reflection in it here. We could try rendering this. So let's see, render image. This should take longer because it's using more lighting information. Right, so it's done. And as you can see here, these metallic balls, they reflect light and they look pretty realistic. So I mean the cube doesn't look that realistic because it's literally glowing, but we could change that up. Let's try removing that sunlight that we added. So delete. This is a nicer looking view, but you need to change that cube a bit more. Maybe if we make the emission darker, you still can't see the surface of the cube. So let's see. I guess without another light, the cube is gonna look emissive, no matter what. So we could, let's see, let's add another point light, G, X, no, G and Z, maybe move it up a bit. Guess, like with emissive materials, you really can't see the contours. Like they just look like they don't really have much shading going on. So let's just try rendering this again. Okay, that looks a lot better. So now let's try switching to Eevee and rendering it here. So go over here, render engine Eevee. You can see that it's very plain and boring. Like it feels like nothing is happening. So Cycles does a lot of things that is turned off on Eevee by default. So these include screen space reflection, bloom, ambient occlusion, and stuff like that. So first turn on ambient occlusion. Let's turn on blue. So that's what makes this look nice and emissive. So while that has bloom, you can see that there's still no reflections here. So for that, we turn on screen space reflections. So as you can see, the material actually starts to reflect now. Let's see. You can also turn on diffraction, which would make it slower, but if you have transparent materials, that would be great. We can turn on motion blur, but I think that only makes sense for animations. Volumetric lighting is turned on. Let's turn on volumetric shadows as well. Performance, hair. So for shadows, you can the lower the cube size, I believe, the better it is. Let's see. Do we have shadows here? Not much. Let's see. Make this smaller. Okay, for shadows we'll have to switch this material. make it rough, turn the roughness to max. Okay, we still don't have shadows. Take this light and make it 100 watt. Yeah. Okay, now we have shadows. Now we can see the contours of the cube. So let's go back to render engine. Shadows. If you decrease the cube size, do we get better shadows? See, that shadow is weird. Yeah, I believe less cube size is better for better shadows. Indirect lighting, no. Film. Yeah, you can make the film transparent, like if you want to take like a transparent PNG. So like if you take any render without that on, like it's gonna render as this background color. But if you make it transparent, like this area is gonna render as transparent in the PNG. So that can be useful at times, but we'll turn it off. So that's mainly it for the render settings. So let's render this in Eevee, render and render image. So you can see Eevee is still better. Okay, wait, no, that's because I changed it. Let's render cycles once more. So right now we have a stronger light, so we can see the actual geometry here. So render engine cycles, render image. Right, so this is cycles and this is Eevee. Because of the ray tracing, cycles has better results, but we were able to get close. I think that is all the settings for Eevee. Yeah. Look at subsurface scattering. Increase volumetrics. Yeah. So now we'll actually get started with shader nodes and actually making good materials. So for now you can delete most of what's in the scene. Just hit X and delete. And we can just add a light, a point light, maybe somewhere here. Go to the object data properties and make it 1000 watts and add a cube. Lighting is acting weird here. Let's go to shadows again. Increase cube size. Smaller cube size is better lighting, but it's also slower. So set it if I want to. Okay, so now we'll go to the next part. So now here are some of the materials we'll design. So we're going to create concrete for the floor, we're going to create bricks, we're going to create metal, we're going to create water, and we're going to create cloth. So we'll start that in a minute. Alright, so let's switch to Blender. Control Alt 1. Okay, so let's switch back to materials view, because it just makes life easier for now, because since all the lighting is handled by the HDRI, we don't need to worry about these lights. So what we do now is you click the cube, and over here we have a tab called shading. So click it. So this cube currently doesn't have any materials, so let's create a new one by pressing that, and let's call it concrete. So we have a lot of views here. So this is the hierarchy, the outliner. This is the properties. This is the file manager. You have the file browser, and this is image editor. So this over here is the node editor. So this is where we'll be doing most of our shader editing, where we'll create materials. So we have this nice city view as an HDRI. So as you can see here, this is the principled VSDF, so that's what we worked on earlier. To change the color, change the metallic, and all of that. But we can also do more. So let's get to that. So before that, we need to enable an add-on which will make things easier. So go to Edit, Preferences, and it's in Add-ons. So this one is called Node Wrangler. So if it's not enabled, you just click it, that enables it. So it just gives us a lot of shortcuts to do stuff. So we can close this for now. So now let's look up pictures of concrete. This reference has just this. but we could just go to the browser, just minimize this, and actually let's look what up on Polyhaven to get an example. So concrete floor. So you can see here that in concrete there's a lot of bumps and there's a lot of discoloration, like the colors are random. So to emulate this, we are using something called a noise texture. So we can go over here, and over here, just like adding a mesh, you just press Shift A, or you just right click. No, you can press add, and you can add a node here. So Shift A, and we're looking for something called a noise texture. So Shift A, texture, and noise texture. So let's add it here. So we can see here that we have two nodes, FAC and color. So you can see that in the base color here you can edit it manually, but you also have a node coming from here. So you see that both of these are yellow. So like usually color nodes are yellow, and it's best to connect similar nodes to each other. So let's put this into color. So that adds the noise texture here. So you can see it's well multicolored, and it's well, that's what noise texture is. Let's make it less metallic to see it better. Here's the roughness. Okay, so here let's make it super rough and make it metallic. So over here in the noise texture, yeah, you can just click and drag to move it around. So you can see you have a bunch of properties to adjust. So one is scale, which is the size of the texture. If you increase it, you see that this thing gets smaller. So that might be a bit counterintuitive. Like if you want parts of the texture to be bigger, you gotta decrease the scale. So you see that it's like very big now. Like it's easier to see with the brick texture. So we can increase the scale. You can also increase the detail. So if you have zero detail, it's kind of bigger chunks, but if it's more detailed, it's a lot more fine. And then there's roughness, which is, well, it's the same as what we had. So like this is very smooth, kind of glassy. If it's rougher, it's better for terrain. Just keep it at 0.5. And distortion kind of gives that spiral effect. So if you ever need that, like I guess some oil paintings or some cloth might have this, but we're setting it to 0 for now. So now of course this is not what concrete looks like. So instead yeah, so over here yeah, this is not so if you want to disconnect a node, you could either take this off and leave it there, or if you hold control and right click, you have this knife. So just cut it like this, and yeah, that's how you disconnect the node. So you can also connect the FAC into the base color, like gray to yellow is usually fine. So now we have something that doesn't have much color, but it's grayscale. So this looks a lot closer to what we would want. We could increase the detail, make it rougher. That's much closer to concrete, but we don't want it to be black and white. So we use something called a color ramp. So Shift A, vector, and converter, and color ramp. So we place this. Alright, so what you can do is you can manually take the FAC and put it in here and connect this to base color, but we want to put it in between. So we drag it onto this and it automatically connects it. So FAC to FAC and color to base color. So now you can have two colors. So it's black and white by default, but we could have something a bit brighter, maybe yellowish, and this could be again yellow but bright. Don't think concretely looks that color. So if you see here, there's two pointers, this one and this one. So everything just goes in between these colors. So in the earlier texture, whatever was completely black is I guess like on one end, and what's completely white is on the other end, and if it's gray, the color is in between these two. So let's decrease the saturation here. So that is a bit closer to dirty white. So now we have the color, let's save that, but it still doesn't have the bumps. So like as you can see here, concrete has a lot of these irregularities. So for that, you go back here and we use something called a bump map. So what we do is Shift A, vector, and bump. So let's take our noise texture. Let's take the FAC and put it into the height. Yeah, not the strength, not the distance, but the height. So this is what we call a height map. So this is a way to fake geometry in games. Alright, so connect this normal to this normal here. It'll take a while to load. It's not white. Yeah. So you can see that this actually looks like proper concrete now. So this uses a normal map. So you can see that it looks like it's not flat. Like it looks like it it has proper lighting information, and if you want, you could go inside the cube. View this. Wouldn't recommend it, but sometimes it's nice. Alright, so here if you press 3 and you go into this view, you can see that this is actually completely flat, but it just looks like it has actual texture. So what you can do is you can adjust the distance to make it pop out more, or you could reduce it to make it pop out less. We can just keep it at 1 for our purposes. So if you want to control the noise texture here, you could manually adjust the scale here, but if you want more controls, we are going to use texture coordinates. So if you have Node Wrangler enabled, you can click this and hit Control T. So remember, okay, it takes a while for shaders to compile. Okay, so Control T, and now you have a texture coordinate node and mapping node. So if you don't have Node Wrangler, just add these in manually. So now what you can do is, in mapping, if you move the location, so you can move the texture, and you can move it on X, Y, and Z. You can also rotate the texture. So this right here is rotated. That can sometimes look a bit more natural if you're aiming for that. And you can also adjust the scale. So let's just reset this. Yeah, I think you can click on one, drag. Yeah, you can drag to select all of them, then you can change them all together. So you can adjust the scale. You can make it bigger on the X, bigger on the Y. Okay, like right now, because our scale is already high, it's hard to see. So instead, let's make it lower. So select these three. Yeah, click and drag down, and then yeah, so now the textures are much bigger. Let's reset it to 1. So that's simple concrete done. Alright, so the next texture we are doing is bricks. So bricks is also really easy. So switch back to Blender. So what you can do is, you can use the same cube, click this, and this allows you to choose your material. So that was what used for the plane, that was for the emissive cube, that was a sphere. So let's see, you could create one here if you press the duplicate key, but let's see, do we want to create one here? Nah. Okay, so press this to duplicate your material, and then let's name this bricks. So let's get rid of everything, like A, X. So this cube has no material, so it's purple. So let's add them from the start. Shader, we did the principled BSDF. So what is the output? Yeah, add a material output node, because otherwise we don't have any output. So output, material output, connect the BSDF to surface, and we have our basic material again. So now what we do is very similar to what we did with noise. Shift A, texture and brick. So let's try connecting color to color, and that creates bricks, but in a very weird way. We will solve that. So the bricks here, you can assign 3 colors to them. So this is white, gray and black. White and gray are the colors of the bricks, and this is the color of the mortar. The mortar is these black lines. So if you select the fact and you apply it here, um, you can see that it's black for the bricks and white for the mortar. So like in when it comes to these textures, black is 1 and 0, white is 0, so that'll come in handy. So let's okay, so if you want to preview something without connecting it to the principal BSDF, what you do is you hit Control Shift and left click. So Control Shift and left click. If you click the BSDF, it shows it here. If you click the bricks texture, it shows it here. So let's make okay, there's an offset, so that's how the bricks are offset. Let's just make it 0 so everything's in line. Frequency is the number of bricks, you think? No, it might be the frequency of the offset. This is squash. I guess it lets you squash some bricks. Like, this has an alternate scale on some sides. So we have the brick width and the row height here. Let's just make it 1 and 1, so we have like nice continuous tiles. So you can see that it's not mapped properly, so for that we use Node Wrangler again. So like select the brick texture, hit Ctrl T, and now instead of generated, take object and put it in vector. Okay, that does not help either. Perhaps? Well, we'll deal with that bit later when we need to. So let's just make it with the normal, the generated for now, and we'll fix that after this. So if you want something with color, again we can go to the color ramp. So converter, color ramp, and let's Control Shift left click the BSDF, and let's select these, move them over here, factor color, and base color here. Okay, so if you just connect the fact here, it's just gonna be 2 colors, but if you select the color, it's gonna be, well, grayscale. So you can see it's kinda inverted. So in color the tiles are white, but in the fact the tiles are black. So let's make this between let's see, some yellowish off-white color, and let's make this one also yellowish but very saturated. I guess the issue here is even the mortar is kind of getting that yellowish color. We could just connect the fact for that, then it would be the other way around. So what you can do is you can select this and drag it here and this to here. So now we have the fact, we have uniform colors. This still looks like it's yellowish, so you can just go back, just drag this here, this here, and connect the color instead. Or but we might not actually need this color variation, so let's go back to fact. Right, so that right there is the brick texture, and we can add a bump map to this as well. So vector bump let's take it back, put it in the height, the normal in the normal. So you can increase the distance, and the tiles should have a bump. It's probably harder to see here, but maybe it's just because of the light. Let's make it super rough. Less specular. Watercolor. Okay, it's hard to see, but it should be there. Alright, so that's the brick texture done, but now we need to fix these. So we have to do something called UV mapping. So here in texture coordinate, let's switch from generator to UV. So plug it into vector. So as you can see, it's kind of weirdly boxed. So click this and go to UV editing. So this is our cube, and just scroll along here and you can get the material view. So if this is practically edit mode, so if you press A, you can select the faces and you can see that they appear here. So let's go to face select and let's work on this face. So get started with that. Or maybe, okay, it's already unwrapped properly. If it's not unwrapped, so like press A, press U and unwrap. Edge seems we need to, okay, I think smart UV project. Okay, so that's a way to unpack the cube. Or you can press U and cube projection. Okay, that pretty much solved our problem, but you can't start from there. It doesn't work all the time. So U, cylinder projection and sphere projection are not for this, kind of obvious. And this is project from view. So just take, you can see that the vertices are like projected here from view. So if you like view it from above and project from view, yeah, select everything, project from view, it's going to look like this. Project from view bounds is the better one. It projects everything from the bounds. Okay, why is it orthographic? Where does this happen? Okay, so press U, um, let's go with Smart UV project and click OK. So if you click this face and you see this here, it's just like the vertex editor. You have all the selection modes, so you can select this. If you move it around, you see the texture moves, and if you increase the size, you can see that it kind of scales properly now. So here if you scale it down, it's scale down and so on. So you can mess with this to, like, every time like something's not working. So like remember, shading, UV, connect the UV to the vector, go to UV editing and hit unpack. So let's just do it the smart way, just U and Q projection. That just solves our problems. So that's a brick texture that's done. Let's go back to the concrete. Just check something. Yeah, bump, back, bump and normal. Back, bump and normal. Okay. Cookies are not that hard to do, right? Right, so let's move on to the next one. Okay, so before we do metal, I'm going to combine both of these, concrete and bricks. So let's just go back to concrete. Let's see, let's add a brick texture here. And oh, not there. Okay, so texture, brick. Okay, why is there two? Okay, so now you can just combine these. So you add a mix, I think mix RGB or mix mix RGB. So we could add the color here, but I think what we need is the pack. So put this in color 1, take the pack and put it in color 2, and create and we plug this into the bump map. So let's move these around, put this here, and put the height here. This should work. Yep. It creates a sort of brick texture, but we need to adjust some things. So maybe increase the factor towards here. Let's just keep it at 0.5. need to map it to UV again, just like we did earlier. So let's see, let's set this to UV. Right, so let's see. Okay, so shading again, let's just scale. Yeah, brick texture. Let's make the width and the height into 1, and let's make the scale 3. No, it was 5 earlier. I think that should be enough. That is not worth it. So we could increase the distance of the bump path to make it more apparent, or another thing we could do is over here, and instead let's just put this into detail. Wait, no, that should, did that work? Cut that. Okay, that that works the opposite of how we want it to be. So let's get rid of this mix shader and plug the FAC into the height. Okay, so this is because these tiles are at 0 and this is at 1. So so we need to do it the other way around. So to do that, we just subtract the fact from 1. So like basically finding the complement. So go to vector, no, converter, math, and switch this to subtract. So value 1 is 1 and value 2 is what do you plug in here, and the output we put it in scale. So that creates a nice concrete tile. Yeah, we need to set the offset to 0. So that's concrete tiles done. We need the texture coordinates over here as well in the mapping. So take this vector and plug it in here. So that's perfect concrete. So now we can move to metal. So let's go here and over here. No. should be a new button here. Okay, let's just click X and then new. Okay, let's call this metal. So we have the principal BSDF here, and like first of all, let's make it metallic and increase the roughness, and I guess increase the anisotropy. No. Okay, so here instead of the principal BSDF, like let's get rid of that, we add a shader called the anisotropic shader. It should be here. Transparent volume, specular. Okay, so you can't really find it as a node over here. I'm not really sure why, but instead go over here in the materials view, select surface and an isotropic BSDF. So what it does is it adds a sort of grains that are usually in metal. So let's see, let's make it a bit more metallic. Okay, it's kinda not working right now. Maybe please increase. Let's see. Or maybe we need a light source. Let's switch to scene lights and scene world. Actually, let's delete that and add a cylinder. Give it metal, shade smooth. We can let's just move on for now. So go back and turn these off. Okay, maybe it's working. Like, it's kind of hard to explain its effects, but it kind of stretches this bit. Alright, so let's move on to glass, which is probably the last thing that we'll make. We'll make glass and then we move on to importing. So let me check. Alright, let's move on to glass. So over here, click this, press new, call it glass. Let's add, okay, so for this, let's add a shader called the glass BSDF. So let's delete that, and well, voila, it's glass. It looks really nice and all, but it's also incomplete because it does not really it's not really see-through. Like, it's nice and reflective, but it's not everything that we need. There's an index of refraction that you can control. We'll need this, but let's leave it as it is for now. So for this, we add another shader called the transparent BSDF, and then you add a mix shader. So what you do is you mix the first one and you mix the second one, and you put this on the surface. So you'll be able to see this in rendered view. No. Okay, might need to switch to cycles. So here, if you increase the FAC, it's completely transparent. If you decrease it, it's you know, it's between opaque and transparent. So if you want to make it look realistic, then you would use something called the Fresnel. So search for the Fresnel shade, the Fresnel node, and plug the FAC into this. So if you switch to rendered view, you can see that this looks a bit more like real glass. Let's just make it an actual glass tumbler. So let's go to this view, edit mode, X, and move the top face. See, back here, rendered mode. It's kind of hard to see. Maybe I could turn off these lights. The IOR effect is kind of hard to see here, but let you extrude this a bit. Okay, that might have made it more messy. Or actually, let's just switch to a sphere. Spheres are better mirrors. Mesh, UV sphere, shade smooth. Select the glass material, and yeah. So basically, what the IOR does is it makes the center part more transparent and the border like less the border refracts more basically. Let me just add another Fresnel default value and keep it here. So I was able to show what this does properly, but Fresnel is pretty useful. Alright, so now we'll switch to importing shaders. So let's get rid of this class, focus on this, and remember the concrete texture here. We could download this from Polyhaven, but we already have one. So let's download a cracked concrete wall. So you go here, you can download a 1K texture. It's gonna take a few seconds. So you get a zip file, and in it there's a folder called textures. So a fast way to unzip it is just go to a folder, drag these and use them. So now you can use this directly in Blender. So what you do is you go over here, add a new material, call it cracked concrete, and switch from principled BSDF to diffuse BSDF. So this is a BSDF that has less options, but it has all we need, like just the color, roughness and normal. So now we add these textures. So you can like directly drag this in, drag this one in, drag this one in, and drag this one in. So as you select these nodes, you can see what they look like over here. So we have okay, so this is our diffuse image. So that's the main image that gives us the color. So we drag the color into the color, which gives us this. And then this is concrete wall NOR GL. So NOR stands for normal. So we plug the color into, no we don't. We add a vector normal map. So we take this, we feed the color into color and normal into normal, and you can already see light kind of reflecting from it, but we are not done. So this is the rough, so the roughness map, and this over here is the displacement map. So I believe it's vector and vector displacement. So put the color over here and displacement is displacement. So we have a proper looking concrete texture. I think this texture is not that nice looking. Right, so if we go back to our folder again, so you can see that they have a blend file that you can open. So that lets you preview that texture. So let's see. These are the textures. They have the coordinate mapping. So normal map to the normal, we've done that. Roughness to roughness, textures to base color. Right, so they've used a diffuse principled VSDF. So wait, displacement and normal. So put the color into, wait, no, it's not vector displacement, and normal map is correct. Okay, so displacement, you put the color into height, and you put that into displacement. I think this looks a tiny bit better. So let's try another texture. So let's see, browse textures. There should be yeah, a rocky trail. So download that, and right, so the thing is, I've already gotten that downloaded. Let's see, over here. So I'm going to use it directly. You can do the same thing that we did earlier, or actually I'll just open that up and show you the blend file. So rocky trail blend. Okay, this one also applies it to principled VSDF. Okay, maybe we needed to do that. Let's get rid of the diffuse. Get a principled VSDF. Color into color. Roughness into roughness. Normal into normal. Oh, and VSDF to surface. This looks slightly better. So now let's create a rocky trail material. And get rid of these images. So like we'll retain everything else but copy these images. So take these, actually, like, I'll go to the extracted one that I have. Drag them one by one. And that is the diffuse, which goes into base color. This is the normal map, the displacement. So this is the roughness. No, not there. to roughness into roughness. Normal into the normal map, and displacement into, I think, the height. So this right here is a lot better looking. So if you look at the rocks, they kind of look 3D. You could also up the scale of it, but that's gonna take a bit of time. Or actually just drag these nodes here, Control T, drag this here, and put the vector from each of these into this. And remember, like, this would look way better if you had a 4K texture, but that takes time. So let's just increase the scale. Okay, that looks very fine. Let's try rendering this in cycles. So as you can see here, the rocks look way more three-dimensional if you render it in cycles because of the really good reflections. You could go back to the concrete or the cracked concrete here. You can see that it just renders better in cycles. So like here you can properly see all the reflections, all the lighting, so it looks realistic. Let's go back to Rocky Trail. Maybe Control Alt 0 here. Function 4. I do not know why it's blurry. Oh, it's blurry because of the field of view effect that we put in earlier. So let's select the camera, focus object to be the cube, and let's just do one last render. Alright, so that was it for importing materials in Blender. So I plan to make the entire scene today, but it seems like that won't be possible. So what you could do is you could make or import materials for grass, for concrete, for the chairs, model them, and use what we learned to apply them. And if you want more tutorials on materials, there's plenty of resources on the internet, so be sure to look at them. So with this, I'm concluding the session. Thank you all for attending, and goodbye.
Circles running around, break down, chase the light. We're